Hey guys, in this video, I'm going to teach you the most common APIs and how to connect them with your n8n. So we're going to be covering basically Google Drive. So if you want to upload file to Google Drive, you will need to know how to set up their API keys. Then we're going to be covering OpenAI's chatgpt API keys and how to connect that with your n8n. Gemini, Sora 2 or VO3. Essentially, we're going to be using a file.ai API marketplace, which offers API keys for any generative model API out there. So I'll show you how to set up the API key and also the basics of the HTTP node for the JSON request. And yeah, guys, that's about it. If that sounds cool, let's go ahead and dive into it right away. All right, guys, but before we dive into APIs, let's do a short breakdown of what APIs are and how they work in general. So for example, this is a good example. You are as a customer in a restaurant, for example. The waiter comes and says, hey, so what do you want to order? So you're going to order, for example, your chicken plate, whatever, with fries. So the waiter is going to take the order and the waiter is going to bring that order to a kitchen, and kitchen will prepare that order for you. And once it's ready, it's going to send it back with the waiter to bring that order back to you, right? So essentially, this is a cycle of the APIs, and that's exactly how it works. So for example, we have a n8n, or you're the customer. And for example, you want to send a post request to the API to generate an image using Sora 2. Okay, so that's going to be something like text to image or text to video. Sorry, it's going to be text to video. So you're going to send basically the prompt, the aspect ratio, and duration. That's going to be included in the API request. So you're the customer, you are sending the data to the API, or aka the waiter. That's going to be the API bridge, and this data will be transmitted to a file platform here. Okay, and the file API will prepare the content for you. It's going to generate, so that's going to be in queue or in processing. And once it's going to hit status completed, the kitchen will say, okay, so the status is completed, the food is ready. The waiter is going to come, it's going to pick it up, and it's going to send that order or the content that's ready back to you. So in a sense, that's how APIs work in the context of n8n. All right, so let's start with the first one. Very frequently in n8n, you will be using a Google Drive to essentially upload images to Google Drive or do some sort of operation with Google Drive. So let me just add a note here. Let's just, for example, build a agent as a reference. Let's just do it quickly. So we'll do a agent. All right, and our agent will have a tool access, which is going to be a drive. Okay, so once the agent performs an operation, maybe it generates some content or PDF or whatever, or some, some kind of content, we want an agent to upload that to Google Drive. And to do that, we need to have a credentials with Google Drive, right? So if I click here on the drop-down menu, you're gonna go here and create new credential. And it's gonna ask you for a couple of things. It's gonna ask you for client ID, and it's gonna ask you for client secret, all right? And then it's going to give you this authorization or basically redirect URL, which will be also something we're going to be using just in a second, okay? So we have three key components here, redirect URL, client ID, and client secret, okay? So let's go to Google Console and let me show you how that works. So before everything, make sure to go to console.cloud.google.com, or basically just type in Google Console and create an account. And what you do, you're going to be here on this main homepage, and then you can create a project. Okay, that's where you start. So in my case, I have this demo project called n8n workflow. In your case, you won't have one. Just click here, and it's going to ask you to create a new project. Just do that and enter some basic informations, right? Your domain, location, whatever. You can just put in some dummy data if you don't have anything yet. And once you do, you will be on the main dashboard here. So what we want to do, we want to go and click on the hamburger menu here on the three dots or three lines. And we're going to go under APIs and services and under library. And what we want to search for is going to be a drive. Okay, so just search for drive. And it's going to be the second one here, or essentially the Google Drive API. That's the one we want to work with. So we're going to go ahead and click on that one. In my case, I already have installed it, so I don't have an option saying enable, right? In your case, you're going to have an option saying enable, so make sure to do that. And it's going to ask you to enter some basic information. You can be a dummy data for now. In my case, I already have it, and want to enable it, you're going to have an option that's going to be called manage, right? So once we click on manage, we're going to end up here. Okay, this is where we want to be. And once you're here, you're gonna go to a credentials tab right here. And here, what you wanna do, you wanna click on the plus sign here, and you're gonna click on create credentials, okay? And in your case, it's gonna be this one here, OAuth client ID. You're just gonna click on it. And application type, it's gonna be a web application. And in here, you can essentially name it whatever you want. It can be like something like n8n or literally anything. And the most important part within this flow, you see here where it says authorized redirect URIs. We're gonna essentially click on here, okay? And then we're gonna go back to n8n and we're gonna basically take this redirect URL. So just simply copy this right here or click on it. It's going to copy it automatically to your clipboard. Go back to your Google and just copy paste that in here, okay? And I do believe I read it incorrectly. So it's a URLs, not URIs. Not sure where that came from, but it's basically a redirect URL and it's required in here for your Google Drive API application, okay? And once you do all of this, just click on create and you're going to be good to go. All right. So it's going to basically give you a couple things that you need. You need the client ID. Okay. And generally, client secret should be a private credential. Make sure you don't share it with anybody. But I'm going to be deleting this right after this step. So in your case, you're going to copy paste the client ID. And you're going to bring that back to n8n and you're going to copy paste that into client ID input in here, right? And the same thing you're going to do for the client secret, right? So you're going to copy the client secret and we're going to bring back to n8n and copy paste that in here. And essentially, you're going to click on sign in with Google and make sure you select the same Gmail account that you use for Google Cloud Console. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But if you did everything correctly, it's going to ask you to log in. And once you follow through the authentication steps, you will be good to go. And you should see screen like this. So if you're seeing this, then you've done everything correctly. Essentially, you're going to scroll down and you're going to click on allow. So this way, you're going to be linking the Google's Drive API directly with your n8n and click allow and the connection will be established successfully. And now that you're done with that step, the credentials to connect with should be available in the drop-down menu here. So if you named it something personal, you're going to see the drop-down menu here. If not, by default, it's going to be called something like Google Drive account, for example. And that's pretty much it. So that's for connecting the Google Drive APIs with your n8n. So from now on, you can create workflows that involve Google Drive. For example, saving and uploading files during the automation process into Google Drive. For example, if you're creating some AI creatives or some content from APIs, you can save it directly to your Google Drive folder and then do some sort of operation with it from there. And if you want to make sure to test out the connection, you're going to go here on the parent drive. What it does is going to connect your Google Drive that is assigned to your Gmail account. Let me just refresh the page quickly. So in my case, it's called My Drive. If I click on that one, it's going to give me a list of all the folders that are available within that drive. Okay. So if you see all these options here or whatever the option, well, not these options specifically because these are my personal options, but whatever the folders and the file structure and system you have in your Google Drive, if you see it from this drop-down menu, then you know that you have successfully established connection between your n8n and Google Drive API. All right, and that's how you basically connect your n8n with Google Drive API. So now let's move on to OpenAI, or basically how to connect ChatGPT, LLMs, and AI models to n8n. It's actually much easier than working with Google Drive. So the first thing you want to do, you're going to go to a OpenAI API platform, or essentially you can go to Google and just type in openai.com/API, and then you're going to log in or create an account. You can use your Google account to create your account faster. And once you do, you're going to end up on their main dashboard right here, right? So it's really simple. The only thing we want to do, we want to go here to settings here on the right corner side, just next to your account icon. You're going to click on the settings icon. And then the first thing we want to do, we're going to go under API keys, right? And here, all you really need to do, just click on create new secret key. You can name the key anything you want. It can be like n8n test or whatever. Select the project, which is default project, and then create your secret key. And once you do, it's going to show you your token or API key once. So make sure to copy paste that into a safe place. API keys should be private. If you share them with somebody, they can easily use that API key for their projects, right? Which means that they're going to use the available credits for your API key. And at some point, you're going to see that it was exceeded and you won't know exactly what happened, right? So make sure to always keep these in a safe and personal space. And these are only to be used for yourself, or if you want to share it with a developer or maybe with a friend, right? So again, should be a discrete sharing process for the API key. So once you have that secret API key, you're going to go back to n8n. And what we want to do here, we're going to click on the chat model. And we're going to search for OpenAI chat model here. And the only thing you really need to do here, under the credential to connect with, click here, create new credential, and essentially copy paste that API key in this input box right here. And then you will click on save, and that's going to be pretty much good to go. So the last step really remaining is now, you're going to go back to OpenAI platform for APIs. And we want to go to billing. And we want to add a credit card, okay? So you're going to add your credit card. In my case, I already have one, so make sure to add the credit card that is supported by OpenAI, which is usually Visa or MasterCard or even PayPal. And once you add your payment method, make sure to add a credit to balance, okay? So I do suggest starting with something like $10. That's more than enough to start building workflows and communicating with the OpenAI's APIs. So start with $10, and what to do, you're gonna see the balance here on your credit balance, because if you don't do that, API key on its own will not work. It is mandatory to have a credit balance on your API key, or essentially on any API keys. In most of the cases, you will need to add some sort of credit. And once you do, once you do that, you're gonna have a success message here. Again, in API key, gonna copy paste that in here, click save, you're gonna see a success message, which means you successfully connected that. So now you can start using the OpenAI's chat models in your projects, okay? So you can select all these models here. So if you click on this drop-down menu, and if you see all these AI models populating, it means that you have successfully connected your API key from OpenAI with your n8n, right? And you can choose any model for testing, for example, GPT 4.1 mini, right? And all we need to do, just go back to workflow, click on the chat message or saved node in here, right here, and just say something like hi, and you're gonna see that AI will respond to you right here. And again, this just confirms that you've successfully connected the API keys from OpenAI with your n8n. All right, so now let's move on to a Gemini. If you, for example, want to use Google's AI models for any reason, really, it's fairly simple and very similar to OpenAI. You're gonna go to ai.studio.google.com. Okay, you're gonna create an account, and then you need to go under the dashboard and under API keys. Again, create an API key, name it whatever you want, right? And it's gonna give you a secret key again, very similar like OpenAI did. So copy that key and bring it to your n8n. So let me just delete the OpenAI, and we'll search for Gemini. And here we're gonna click on create new credential, right? It can be, you can call it anything, okay? It doesn't matter. And just simply copy paste your API key in here and click on save. So I got an error here because I by accident copy pasted OpenAI's API key in here. We are actually working with Gemini. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create a new one. I'm gonna do something like an n8n test. Okay, let me just copy the API key quickly. All right, so I created a brand new API key. It's this one right here, October 13, cool. So I'm gonna copy the API key. I'm gonna bring it to n8n, and let me just remove the OpenAI one and just copy paste, and now we should be good to go. Okay, there you go, guys. So connection test successfully means that the API key was the correct one and the connection was successful. All right, so now let's test it out. Let's go back to n8n, and we'll do the same thing like we did with ChatGPT. I'm gonna go here, whoops, to chat input, and I'm gonna say hi, and we should get a response from the AI model. There you go. All right, and now let's do the last one, which is a bit more complex, especially if you're a beginner. So this is going to be a custom API request. And for that, we're going to be using a file.ai platform. And again, file is essentially a marketplace for APIs, right? So we have VO3, we have Sora, we have Hilo, we have Minimax, and essentially any content generational model that's out there. So what you want to do, you want to go to file.ai, create an account, and again, make sure to add some credits to your account because you need to pay for the API requests and tokens. You can start with something like $20. It's going to be more than enough to get you going. And once you do that, you should see the credits in here. So for us to start working with AI models on File AI, we're going to go to Explore tab, right? And actually, we can just go ahead and search for exactly what we want. So in today's example, we'll just use Sora 2, which is kind of the most recent one. So I'll just type in Sora 2. And the one I'm specifically interested in would be text to video, for example, okay? So I'm gonna just select this one right here, all right? So that's where you should be located to start working with your APIs. And from here, we're gonna move on to API tab in here. And we need to change the type of API connection from, I believe by default, it's gonna be on JavaScript and Node.js, right? What you wanna do, you wanna select the drop-down menu here and switch to HTTP or curl, right? And this is what we need here. Let's go back to n8n, and essentially we're gonna add a HTTP node as a tool, just really for sake of the example. So I'm gonna search for HTTP node, right? So HTTP node, think of it as a tool that lets you call APIs externally from n8n. And we have multiple methods, right? So when you work with APIs, you're going to be using a method called post, because when you need to send a request to API to generate something, for example, in our case, we want to send a prompt with some data to generate a content or video from file AI API using Sora AI model, for example, right? So to do that, or in general, in most cases, we're going to be using a post method because we are posting a method through an API to the third party, right? So the next thing we need the URL or the API URL where we're going to be sending it to. In this case, we are sending it to file AI, right? So if we go to the documentation here, this is the URL. So essentially, we're going to copy paste this entire thing until the /pro, bring it back to n8n, copy paste that in here. Make sure you don't have any extra space because it's case sensitive. If you do have like space here, it might crash. So make sure to delete that. So for authentication, I'm gonna go to a generic credential type and I'm gonna go with header. And in my case, I already have my API key set up. So I have file API, and that essentially includes the authorization key and the API key from file AI. But in your case, you're not gonna have that, okay? So what you wanna do, you're gonna click here on the drop-down menu, create new credential, okay? And in here, it follows a very specific structure. Let me show you exactly what you need to enter here. So you're gonna go back to a file AI/dashboard, okay? And just right here, getting started with API, you're gonna click on get an API key. All right, in my case, I already have one. Just click here on add a key, and you're going to generate the key very similar to like Gemini and OpenAI API key. So bring that very long number or the API key, bring it back to n8n and simply copy paste that into the value. But before you do that, there is a specific structure, okay? So for example, let me just open a notepad here. The way it's going to work, you will need to copy paste into the value your API key plus a word key. Okay, so it's going to go like this. So key, and here it's going to be your API key like this. So essentially, you need to copy paste this entire thing, including the word key, into the value box in here. All right. So that's for the API key, and also you need to copy paste the word authorization. Okay, so this word right here is going to go into the name, because when we work with APIs, we are essentially working with a header of type of authentication, and header of usually includes a name and the value pair keys, okay? So the name would be authorization, and the key would be essentially literally the word key. Then you're gonna press on space and copy paste the API key you generated in your file API. So if you again reference to a documentation on their official API, you see here is the header of, or essentially the name, authorization, and then we have the key, space, and your file API key. Okay, so if you ever forget how to do that, you can always find some reference from the API documentation for each of the API models here. And once you do, make sure to click save and you're going to be good to go. And now you can select it from the header of application. In my case, I already have one. So let me select that here. And here we need to select a couple of options before we can send requests to file API. So the first one is going to be send headers, okay? Because we are sending some data via headers to the file AI. And this you can find in here. So under the header, you can see something here that says content type and application JSON. Okay, so again, we have a key value pairs because we are working with a JSON. So we're gonna take the content type, which is gonna be the name. Okay, and then you're gonna take application JSON, which is gonna be the value pair in here. All right, so that's all you need to do in here. And then you're gonna click on send body, make sure it's JSON, and then we're gonna select using JSON. Okay, really important. And what do we want to send to file AI? That's the question, right? So the most common one obviously is going to be a prompt, right? So one of the mandatory fields would be the prompt, because obviously you need a prompt that will describe what kind of video you're trying to generate through a Sora, right? So all you need to do really is just copy this JSON in here, okay? Just write this from this curly bracket to the ending one. And we're going to bring it to JSON and copy paste that in here, right? So this is the JSON body we're sending to the API key, okay? So to the API through file to generate a basically static prompt, okay? But obviously within the n8n, this is not ideal because every time you're going to be running this workflow, it's going to be always generating exactly the same content, right? Because we have a static prompt. Right, so again, I'm not going to be covering this entirely into this video. If you want to learn exactly how to create expressions and dynamic prompts using AI models, make sure to check out my YouTube channel. I have a bunch of videos on that covering exactly how to do that. But as a quick overview, the way it would work, we would essentially have a chat here, and then I'm going to say something like generate video of a cat flying in a space, stuff like that, right? So that's gonna be my prompt that I'll send to Sora to generate that piece of content, right? So AI agent will receive that, and let's say it's gonna process it and maybe improve the prompt. And then we would need to grab an expression, right, from the AI agent. And then the expression can be dynamically injected in here instead of a static text, right? So the way expressions work, let me just show you that quickly. Let me delete the string right here. If I remove all of this, I can simply drag, for example, this JSON in here into here. And you guys can see now it became sort of an expression, right? Obviously, right now it's broken, which is really for reference. But in your case, you would receive a improved prompt from the AI agent within the JSON like this, right? You're gonna say it's gonna say something like data or the prompt or response, and that prompt will contain the dynamic prompt that you used in the chat input box or via the AI agent, and that will be injected as an expression in the prompt here dynamically. So every time it's going to change based on the prompt that you enter or provide via the AI agent. Okay, so this would be a better example. I just grabbed kind of the chat input hi, right? So now whatever I type in the box in here will be transferred directly to the JSON request in here, right? So it's going to be dynamically whatever I enter in the chat input box, it's going to be injected to an expression in here, right? The only thing, I made a small typo. Every time you work with prompts, make sure that you have you have two of these symbols in here, or essentially you need two quotation marks, okay? So you're gonna enter two quotation marks like this and give it a bit of space. And now you can drag and drop the chat input, or basically that would be your prompt. And you're gonna drag it in between the both of the quotation marks. Make sure you delete the spacing in here because it's case sensitive, so we don't break the API request. And that's basically the fundamental setup, how you can work with third-party APIs. There's a bunch of more out there, but all of them will be always using the same method through the JSON. You'll be sending, for example, prompt, or if we go to file API, we see we have a couple of optional optional data we can send to the API. If I scroll down here, we can also send, for example, the prompt itself, resolution. Okay, so this will affect the pricing of the API. If it's an 1080p, it's going to cost you more for each of the API runs. If it's going to be 720, it's going to be cheaper, right? And aspect ratio, same thing, right? So are you creating ads for YouTube? Are you creating video for TikTok? Are you creating, content for Instagram? So aspect ratio will define the size or the format of the content that you will get back from the API. And obviously the duration, really important one, because if you set something like 10, 20, or 30 seconds, you're going to be paying quite a lot, because usually you get charged per second, right? So usually if you want to be on a budget, make sure that this is somewhere around 8 to 12 seconds. So you have enough tokens and credits to play around with the content through the API. Okay, so that's a wrap. I hope you found it useful. If you have any questions or if you ran into any issues while we were doing this in terms of connecting your APIs or n8n to APIs, drop a comment and I'm going to help you out. And in general, if you have questions about n8n, AI automations, any questions as a whole, leave a comment and I'm going to help you out personally. If not, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe so I can keep making these videos for all of you out there who want to learn AI and automations. And I'm going to wish you happy building as always, and I'm going to see you next time.